In this video, I really want to talk about what I think are the top 5 tips for new tournament fishermen. So whether you are young and you're just getting into the tournament scene, or maybe you just have always wanted to fish a tournament, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about the top 5 things that I think you should know. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Fin Fishing. It is the month of December. I have a ton of sales going on at Fin Fishing right now. So USA made sun shirts are 20% off. The all new duck shorts are 20% off. Some items like the new foam trucker are 30% off. And not only that, but anyone who buys something in the month of December are going to be put into a drawing to win one of 4 different prizes. So I'm actually giving away 2 of my bass hats that are one of a kind. I've only made 1 in those colors. Also, I'm giving away an ARC Tharp Series grinder rod. This is the best crankbait rod that I've ever used. And also an ARC Gravity 7 reel. This is the finest bait caster that I've ever used. So all you got to do, purchase something from Fin Fishing in the month of December. You will be automatically placed into that drawing. I really appreciate all of you who have shopped at Fin Fishing in the past, and thank you to everyone who simply watches these videos. All right, let's talk about tournament fishing a little bit. Now, I know that tournament fishing isn't for everyone, and a lot of guys do not really, they don't really want to fish tournaments, and they see fishing as more of a stress reliever than bringing some stress to them. But I love tournament fishing, and so this was one of the questions that I got asked here recently: is what would you say to new tournament fishermen? And so I actually made a list here of 5 main things that I think every new tournament fisherman should know. So number 1 I put on here, I think that this is extremely important: you're going to get beat. Okay, like in the tournament fishing world, you are getting beat more than you are winning tournaments. And not only that, but when you first get started into tournaments, the likelihood of you like really sucking on a couple of tournaments is really high, because there's a lot of things, there's a lot of little nuances in tournament fishing that is just a lot different than when it comes to kind of your recreational fishing. And so once you kind of get a grasp of that, once you start to make decisions a little bit faster out there on the water, things start to come together. Now, I'm not saying that you couldn't go out and win your very first tournament, because maybe you fish the same body of water all the time, some really good areas, you catch some big fish in those areas, you decide to enter a tournament and you win it. Like, that could absolutely happen, and we all want that. But in the tournament scene, you're going to get beat. And one of the biggest things that you should know is that if you are just fishing a lake, maybe you just moved to a new area, you're just starting to get into tournaments, you're fishing a lake, you may be fishing against guys who have fished that exact same lake for the last 20 years, 25 years. They may have tournament fished that exact same lake. So if you just mentally think about it, use a little common sense, there's really no reason that you should start winning tournaments right off the bat. So just know that I'm not trying to deter you. I'm just saying, like, you're going to get spanked sometimes out there, and that's absolutely fine. Now, the very first tournament I ever fished was when I was 15 years old, and I fished with my uncle down in Florida, and it was one of the most memorable experiences of my life, because I wanted to catch one of our fish that day. I ended up catching 3 of our fish, including 2 4-pounders, and I lost an 8-pounder, which would have won us the tournament, and it would have got big bass in that tournament. But I lost it right at the boat, and it was just this crazy experience. But the very first tournament that I fished in when I came back home, because I was down in Florida, when I came back home to Ohio, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go tournament fishing. So I went and fished all these tournaments in a John boat against a lot of guys who had bass boats. And I remember the very first Ohio tournament I ever fished, I did not weigh in a single fish. And as a matter of fact, I think the second tournament that I fished in Ohio, I also did not, no, I take that back. I weighed in 1 fish. It was a big one, actually. It was the only fish I caught that day. It was a 4-pounder. It wasn't big bass of the tournament, but it was so close. But that was enough for me to keep coming back. So you're going to get spanked. Just know that it's going to happen. All right. Second thing that I think is really important if you're just getting into tournaments is, if you can, fish with somebody who has fished tournaments. Like I talked about just a minute ago, I was fortunate that the very first tournament I fished with my uncle, who had been tournament fishing down in Florida for a long, long time. And so simply fishing that tournament with him, I immediately understood a lot more than if I had just gone into it all by myself. You know, things like little things like getting there early enough, doing the registration, that kind of stuff, but also just the way that he went about, you know, dissecting an area and also realizing when fish aren't biting and when we needed to move. Those little things you really pick up on quickly, and I think that it's important to fish with anglers, if you can, who have been doing it for a while. And so sometimes this also may be, you know, signing up as a co-angler. You know, fishing as a co-angler, I think, is a great opportunity for every fisherman to simply learn. And I think that we talked about co-angling a couple of days ago. I think that it's also very important to make that your main goal as a co-angler. I think that we all want to go out there, we want to, you know, possibly win some money fishing. Like that's an awesome opportunity that we have here in the US to be able to do that. But the biggest thing that you should want, the biggest goal is really to just learn something from the guy that you are fishing with. And you may learn a ton. I know that me as a co-angler, you know, fishing on the Bassmaster Opens, I got to just see some really cool things and be in some really neat experiences where I learned a lot. So whether it's with a co-angler or with a buddy who's doing it, I really think it's important to jump in the boat with someone who's been doing it. It can really help you to cut down on that kind of time frame where you kind of learn things as far as tournament fishing goes. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is the third thing is pre-fishing goes a long way. And I think that it's really important to understand this because in a lot of local bodies of water that we fish, there's a lot of guys out there who simply don't have the time to pre-fish for example, like a Saturday tournament, you know? And if they do, a lot of times it is the week prior to that, you know, where it's the weekend before that. And if that is all that you can do, maybe you work a 9 to 5 or it's hard to get off time or whatever it may be, pre-fishing a little bit, at least going out and seeing the body of water that you're fishing and kind of getting a clue as to what the fish are doing, it can go a very long way in a local tournament. And especially if you can do this the day or two before the tournament. Like if you can spend a full day out there prior to the tournament just trying to get into some areas where you know there are a lot of fish, it can really help you in that tournament to start catching fish and to gain a lot of confidence. Now, I know that that's not always possible. And whether it's for 2 hours on a Friday night or whether it's for 8 hours the Saturday before, I still think pre-fishing is very important. Now, one thing that I want to say about fishing before the tournament is the closer you get to the tournament, kind of the less fish that you want to catch, if that makes sense. If I am pre-fishing for a tournament, I am typically going to catch like 1 or 2 fish from a general area, and then I'm going to start shaking fish off. And it really just depends on the size of the fish that I catch. If I find a little area and the first fish I catch in that area is like a keeper, I'm like, okay, that's great, but keepers aren't gonna win you a tournament. Now, if the next fish I catch is like a 3 or 4 pounder, and that's a big fish for the lake that I'm about to fish tomorrow, I'm done setting the hook on fish. I may shake off another fish or two that bite, but I am done setting the hook because all I want to see in certain areas is, does this area have the ability to produce a big bite? A big bite. That is what I'm looking for. Now, if the very first fish I catch in that area is a big one, a 3-4 pounder, then a lot of times I'm going to try to get one more bite. I'm going to shake that fish off if I get that bite, and then I'm going to move on. I'm going to mentally mark that or mark it with a GPS unit, and I'll come back there in the tournament. The biggest thing I'm trying to say here is do not win your practice period. Do not go out there and smash the fish and be like, yes, I'm going to win this tournament tomorrow because I just caught 5 pounders, and every tournament is won with 25 pounds. Because guess what? You come back the next day, those 5 fish that you just caught are not, like almost 100% of the time, they are not going to be biting your bait again. Okay, so do not win your practice period, win during the tournament. Be smart about when you get into an area, realizing what that area holds or could potentially hold, and then move on. All right, the next thing that I want to talk about, and this kind of goes along with my last point about, or a couple points ago about pre-fishing, is start with some layups. To me, like I heard this a long time ago when I think it was Jason Christie, who is one of the best tournament bass fishermen ever, was talking about how a lot of times when he goes to the body of water, he kind of likes to start with what he called a layup. Now he was a basketball guy. Jason Christie is a basketball guy, and basically what his concept, what his thought process was, is that sometimes when he gets to the body of water, he just likes to get things going. And like on the basketball court, sometimes you gotta get some layups, get your confidence going before you start shooting those 3-pointers. And so the big story here is that I have found that in my bass fishing, I am the exact same way. In those tournaments, no matter where I go in the country, in those tournaments where I can catch like a small limit of fish or just get some bites early, it really helps to like get things going mentally for me. It really helps build a lot of confidence. And even if those fish are small, you know, if the lake that you're fishing, you need to be catching 3 and 4 pounders and you're catching 2 pounders, I'm telling you what, a little 10-pound limit in the back of your mind, it allows you to fish so much more free throughout the day. So anytime that I can go and get a small limit of fish, especially on those tournaments where it is more difficult to catch just 5 keepers, man, it goes a tremendous way mentally. It will really help to set up your day. So feel free in the mornings, if you have an area where it's like, I know that I probably won't catch a lot of fish there, or I probably won't catch a lot of big fish there, but maybe I'll catch a lot of fish there, just hit it real quick. Hit it, catch your 5, and just see what that does to you mentally. It will really allow you to relax. So start with some layups. All right, the second or the fifth thing that I think is very important is to, in your first couple of tournaments, if you're a new angler, try to stick to the things that you are the best at, or the things that you have done a lot. And what I really mean by that is the techniques that you are the best at. You know, for a lot of anglers, the further and further that, or the more and more tournaments that they fish throughout kind of their lifetime, the more they start to kind of see who they are as a fisherman. You know, some fishermen are just shallow water guys. Some guys really like to use their electronics. Some guys really like to not only be shallow water fishing, but they really excel at flipping and pitching. You know, some guys just like to fish moving lures. Whatever it may be, stick to your strengths in those first couple of tournaments, because one of the most important things that you can do as a tournament angler is be comfortable and confident out there on the water. So if you're doing a technique that you have a ton of confidence in and you are very comfortable out on the water, it is going to make your first couple of tournaments, that whole experience, a lot better. Even if you are not catching fish, you still have a lot of confidence in what you are doing. And so real quick, guys, the sixth thing I just thought about, and I think that it's really important, if you get into tournaments, and this kind of goes along really with the first thing that I talked about, but do not quit on a tournament too soon. Like if you go for an entire year and you just are not doing well in tournaments, that's okay. It's okay to really kind of get your brains more or less beat in before starting to just understand tournament fishing a little bit more. And I'll give you a perfect example of this is actually myself. You know, I have always loved to tournament fish, but there was a local body of water that I absolutely hated. And I hated it to pieces. And for those of you who are local to Ohio, it's called Alum Creek. And I hated this lake because every tournament that I fished from like age 15 to, I don't know, really up until like my mid-20s, every tournament that I fished there, I felt like I could just never figure out the fish. And so I knew though that there was a tournament, a Tuesday night tournament series that went out of that particular body of water. Like every Tuesday night, there was a tournament out there. So I decided, I asked my buddy, I'm like, dude, I really want to learn this lake because it's 10 minutes away from me, but I hate it. And I just really want to learn this lake. And so he and I jumped into these Tuesday night tournaments. And I'm telling you what, the first year, we did not like do that well. Like we had a couple of decent tournaments because there's 20 of them throughout the year. But there was a couple of decent tournaments. But for the most part, we kind of got our brains beat in. Like I remember the very first tournament we fished, we zeroed on this lake. And so immediately, I think a lot of guys at times will they will hit that and they'll be done. But we zeroed in that tournament, and then by the end of the year, we started to kind of figure some things out. The next year, we did a lot better. And we didn't I don't know if we won any tournaments that year or not, because I just can't remember. But since those first couple of years, and I'm trying not to just completely toot my own horn here, but since then, we typically win like 5 to 7 tournaments a year out there. We'll fish probably about 20, me and my partner, we fish about 25 tournaments a year out there. We usually win about 5 to 7 of them. And we've been Angler of the Year in that same Tuesday night championship for like the last 3 or 4 years, okay? So what I'm saying is that some things just take time. And like I said, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I was in that exact same place where I was getting my brains beat in by guys who were very good at that body of water. And every year you learn more and more. And I think that is what really can separate guys, is simply not quitting too soon and just continuing to press on. All right, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you have a great time at your first tournament or maybe tournament fishing this year. And I will see you guys later tonight.